What if the flood wasn't just about rain and a boat? The Bible hides a terrifying secret within its verses, a cosmic war, fallen beings, and a cover-up that reshapes history. You're about to discover what really happened, why it was suppressed, and how this truth changes everything for you today. Stay with me. You stand at the edge of a truth so dangerous, empires tried to erase it. The Sunday school tale of Noah's Ark, a sanitized fragment. Genesis chapter 6 opens with a sentence that should have rewritten theology. The sons of God saw the daughters of men were fair and took them wives. Who are these sons of God? Not human kings, not Sethites. The ancient world knew them as the Watchers, angelic beings who crossed the boundary between heaven and earth. Their offspring were the Nephilim, the giants, the mighty men of old. But these were not heroes. They were abominations, hybrid creatures that corrupted the very fabric of creation. God saw that the wickedness of man was great, but the source was extraterrestrial, a pollution of the human lineage. The flood was not merely punishment, it was a surgical strike, a divine reset to cleanse a world infected by forbidden unions. You feel it, don't you? That gnawing sense that the story has gaps. You were made for this revelation. If something in you recognizes this truth and you want more revelations like this, leave a comment and stay with this story until the end. Your reaction tells me to keep opening these doors for you. But the water was the least of it. What truly triggered the deluge will haunt your dreams. Picture the world before the flood, not a primitive landscape, but a civilization drunk on stolen knowledge. The Bible calls it the days of Noah, a time when the earth was filled with violence. But violence against whom? Against what? The hidden context reveals a planet under siege from within. The Watchers, 200 in number according to forbidden texts, descended upon Mount Hermon. They swore an oath, a pact to take human wives and reveal secrets. These were not minor angels. They were high-ranking entities from the heavenly courts, entrusted with watching over humanity. They broke their charge. They taught humanity metallurgy, sorcery, astrology, warfare knowledge that accelerated corruption. Imagine a world where technology and magic fused, where giants strode the earth, consuming resources and perpetrating horrors. Human women bore hybrid children, beings of immense strength and appetite. The line between human and divine blurred, threatening God's plan for a pure lineage through which redemption would come. This was the pre-flood reality, a garden gone monstrous, a creation twisting under celestial treason. And God watched. He waited, but the infection spread too far. The clock was ticking, and then the rupture. The invisible architecture of the cosmos was at stake. Heaven operates on order layers of authority, realms of spirit and matter. The Watchers' descent wasn't just a moral failure, it was a dimensional breach. They left their proper domain, their first estate, as Jude writes. By mingling their spiritual essence with human flesh, they created a metaphysical catastrophe. The Nephilim were more than physical giants. They were spiritual anomalies, beings whose existence defied the created order. Their very presence anchored chaos on earth. Think of it, angelic DNA splicing with human genetics. This was an assault on the image of God inherent in humanity. The plan for the Messiah, the seed of the woman, was being genetically compromised. The spiritual realm trembled. Other angels watched, some in horror, some in rebellion. A cosmic war simmered, not with swords, but with bloodlines. The boundaries set at creation were violated. The firmament itself, the barrier between waters above and below, became a symbol of a separation that was crumbling. God's response was not arbitrary rage. It was a necessary surgical intervention to preserve the possibility of salvation. But the decision carried a terrible cost. And the Watchers, they knew what was coming. Their fate was sealed in darkness. The rupture came not with a bang, but with a whisper of fallen angels in the ears of eager human brides. The Book of Enoch, preserved against all odds, details the descent. Shemihaza, Azazel, and their cohorts choosing mortal women, begetting children who grew into giants hundreds of feet tall. These giants turned on humanity, devouring crops, livestock, and finally, people. They drank blood, they practiced cannibalism. The earth cried out with the voice of their victims. Azazel taught men to make weapons of war and women the arts of deception and cosmetics. Shemihaza revealed the cutting of roots and astrology. Every forbidden secret spilled forth, accelerating human depravity. Violence became the currency of the day, but it wasn't just human-on-human violence, it was a systematic unraveling of creation. The Nephilim, unable to die naturally, became roaming terrors. Their souls, upon death, became the demons that haunt our world-evil spirits, born from corrupted essence. God surveyed the devastation. His heart was grieved. The beautiful experiment of humanity was now a grotesque fusion, a playground for rebel angels. The verdict was inevitable. I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth. But Noah found grace. Why him? Because his genealogy was still pure. His line was untainted by the Watcher's seed. The ark was not just a boat. It was a genetic life raft, and the waters began to gather. The aftermath was apocalyptic. The fountains of the great deep burst open. The windows of heaven were opened. This was not a gentle rain. It was a cosmic unraveling, a return to the watery chaos before creation. The barriers broke. The waters above the firmament and the waters below the earth converged in a cataclysmic purge. Imagine the screams drowned by the roar of tidal waves taller than mountains. The giants, for all their strength, were crushed or drowned. Their hybrid bodies sank into the mud, becoming the fossils that confuse modern science. The Watchers were not destroyed by water. They were bound captured by the archangels, Michael, Gabriel, and others, and cast into a place of darkness, to be held until final judgment. The earth was scrubbed clean, but not entirely. Evidence suggests some Nephilim bloodlines survived through the wives of Noah's sons, leading to post-flood giants like Goliath. The contamination persisted. The flood was a reset, not a complete eradication. For 150 days, the waters prevailed. Every living thing on dry land perished. The silence after the deluge must have been deafening. A new world baptized in judgment emerged, slick and steaming. Noah and his family stepped onto a grave, but they carried a secret. And buried in the mud were bones that tell a different story. They didn't want you to know how deep the corruption went. Primary evidence sits in your Bible, cryptic and haunting. Genesis 6:1-4 is the Rosetta Stone, a fragment that begs for context. The sons of God, Bene Elohim in Hebrew, a term used elsewhere for divine beings in the heavenly council. Job 1:6-1. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward. Why afterward? Because the flood didn't wipe them all out. Numbers 13:33 confirms it. The spies saw Nephilim descendants in Canaan, giants, the sons of Anak. The Bible itself testifies to a survival. Then Deuteronomy 32:8 hints at the divine council. When the Most High gave the nations their inheritance, when he divided all mankind, he set up boundaries for the peoples according to the number of the sons of God. The original Hebrew reads, sons of God, later changed to sons of Israel by scribes. Why the alteration? To obscure the pantheon of spiritual beings governing nations. Peter and Jude in the New Testament pull back the veil further. Jude references the Watchers who did not keep their proper domain and are reserved in everlasting chains under darkness. Peter speaks of spirits in prison who disobeyed in the days of Noah. These apostles had access to texts like Enoch, which they quoted as authoritative. The evidence is embedded, a whisper in the canon. But the full testimony was removed. Why? Because it reveals a terrifying spiritual war that continues today. Hidden testimony screams from the apocryphal shadows. The Book of Enoch, quoted by Jude, survived in Ethiopia and among the Dead Sea Scrolls. It names names, Shemihaza, Azazel, and their crimes. It describes the Watcher's teachings, the giant's violence, and the archangel's intervention. Enoch, the great-grandfather of Noah, was taken to heaven and shown these secrets. He wrote them down. His book was considered scripture by early Jews and Christians, but by the 4th century it vanished from Western Bibles. Why? Because it detailed a cosmology too dangerous for institutional control, a narrative where angelic rebellion precedes human sin, where the problem isn't just Adam's apple, but celestial treason. Then there's the Book of Giants, found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, fragmentary but clear. The giants had dreams of impending doom, and Enoch interpreted them. These texts form a suppressed dossier on the flood. They tell of the Watcher's plea for mercy, denied, of the giant souls becoming demons, of a world so corrupted that even animal species began to hybridize, as Enoch describes monstrous births. This is the testimony they burned, the scrolls they hid. You were made for this knowledge. It explains the darkness in our world, the ancient evil that predates humanity, but the keepers of this truth risked everything to preserve it. The keepers were outcasts, mystics, and rebels against religious consensus. The Essene community at Qumran by the Dead Sea copied Enoch and giants onto scrolls and hid them in jars, preserving them for 2,000 years. Early Christian writers like Tertullian and Origen revered Enoch. Ethiopian Christians never removed it from their canon. Through centuries of suppression, underground streams carried the story, in Kabbalistic legends of the fallen angels, in Gnostic texts describing the archons, in folk tales of giants in every culture. These were the ones who refused to forget, who believed that the full truth of the flood was essential for understanding spiritual warfare. They passed down manuscripts at night, whispered interpretations in secret meetings, and coded the knowledge into art and architecture. You are part of this lineage now. By seeking this truth, you join a chain of witnesses that empires could not break. If you feel that you were made for this kind of hidden truth, write in the comments what most shook you so far and share this video with one person who also hungers for more. Your voice helps this buried story reach the ones who need it. Because in the 20th century, the jars were opened and the world changed forever. Modern discovery erupted in 1947 when a Bedouin shepherd tossed a rock into a cave and heard pottery shatter. The Dead Sea Scrolls were unearthed, and among them, multiple copies of the Book of Enoch in Aramaic. Scholars were stunned. Here was textual proof that Enoch was widely read and considered authoritative in Second Temple Judaism. The scrolls dated to before Christ, confirming its antiquity. Suddenly, the New Testament references made stark sense. Academic journals buzzed with reassessments. The flood narrative was no longer just Genesis. It was a complex intertextual event spanning multiple documents. Archaeologists began re-excavating ancient sites, finding giant skeletons reported in old newspapers, though often suppressed by institutions uncomfortable with the implications. Anthropologists connected global flood myths from Mesopotamia to the Americas, each echoing themes of divine wrath against hybrid beings or corrupt gods. The Gilgamesh epic, the Atrahasis story, they all speak of a great deluge, but the biblical version, when paired with Enoch, reveals a unique theological depth. A God who acts to save humanity's genetic purity for a redemptive purpose. The evidence survived. They didn't want you to know, but now it's undeniable. And it forces a terrifying question. What does this mean for our understanding of evil today? The deeper truth is theological dynamite. the flood event reframes the entire cosmic drama. Sin is not merely a human inheritance from Adam, it is compounded by angelic invasion. The seed of the serpent from Genesis 3:15 takes on a literal dimension, the Nephilim as the serpent's progeny, opposing the seed of the woman, the Messiah. Jesus' mission included defeating these spiritual forces. Colossians 2:15 says he disarmed the principalities and powers. This includes the Watchers and their offspring. The flood was the first major battle in a war that culminates at the cross. Your salvation is not just from personal sin, it's from a corrupted order that sought to hijack humanity's destiny. The terrifying truth, the same spiritual forces are active today, though perhaps in different forms. They still seek to corrupt, to hybridize, to distort God's image in us through ideology, technology, and spiritual deception. The Bible reveals this to prepare you. You were made for this war. Knowing the full story of the flood equips you to discern the patterns of invasion in your own time. It explains why the world feels so broken, because it was fundamentally scarred by a pre-Adamic rebellion. But there is hope. The ark was a prototype of Christ, the ultimate refuge. And just as Noah was preserved, so you can be. But the calling is urgent. Your calling is now clear. This isn't ancient history, it's your spiritual ancestry. You stand in a lineage that stretches back to Noah, to Enoch, to those who kept the truth alive. The knowledge of the Watchers and the Nephilim isn't for morbid curiosity, it's for warfare. Ephesians 6:12. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world. These are the same entities, the same hierarchical rebellion. Your faith is a front line. By understanding the flood, you understand the enemy's playbook: corruption of purity, distortion of creation, hybridization of sacred boundaries. Today, that plays out in genetic engineering, transhumanism, and ideological movements that blur the lines between human and machine, male and female, good and evil. You are called to be an ark builder in your generation, to preserve truth, to stand pure amid the deluge of deception. Your soul hungers for this because you were designed for this battle. They didn't want you to know your true identity as a guardian of sacred order, but now you do. And the evidence isn't just in texts, it's etched into the earth itself. Physical traces whisper from the soil, giant skeletons reported across the globe from North America's mound builder sites to the catacombs of Rome, though many were confiscated or destroyed by institutions like the Smithsonian in the 19th century, as documented in old newspapers. Ancient megalithic structures like Baalbek in Lebanon, with stones weighing thousands of tons, hint at pre-flood technology taught by the Watchers. Flood geology points to catastrophic water events worldwide, with sedimentary layers filled with jumbled fossil evidence of rapid burial, not slow evolution. The Black Sea deluge hypothesis, the discovery of underwater cities, all echo a global cataclysm. Even DNA studies show a bottleneck in human population around the time of the flood. The myths of every culture, Greek Titans, Hindu Daityas, Norse Jotunal, speak of giant beings warring with gods, followed by a great flood. This is not coincidence. It's collective memory of a real event. The Bible reveals the terrifying truth behind these traces, a world reshaped by judgment. They didn't want you to connect these dots because it validates the biblical narrative as supreme history. But the stones cry out, and now, so must you. The opposition was systematic and ruthless. Early church councils, like the Council of Laodicea in 364 AD, began listing canonical books, excluding Enoch. Why? Because its emphasis on angelic sin and pre-Adamic corruption challenged the developing doctrine of original sin as solely human-focused. It complicated the narrative of a fall that could be neatly solved by church sacraments. Political power played a role. Emperors like Constantine wanted a unified, manageable Christianity, not one fractured by apocalyptic speculation about watchers. Texts were burned. Libraries were purged. Scholars who cited Enoch were labeled heretics. The Reformation continued the trend. Luther dismissed Enoch as non-canonical. Modern academia often marginalizes it as pseudepigrapha, a fancy term for suppressed. The pattern is clear. Institutions that control spiritual narrative fear the full truth of the flood because it decentralizes authority. It suggests that evil has supernatural origins beyond human choice, requiring vigilance beyond ritual. They didn't want you to know because knowledge is power. And this knowledge empowers you to see beyond the pulpit to the cosmic battlefield. Now you know what they feared. The question is, what will you do? Your decision is urgent. Will you accept this terrifying truth and let it transform your faith? Will you become a keeper sharing this revelation with those asleep in sanitized stories? Or will you retreat into comfortable ignorance? The stakes are eternal. This truth reframes your identity. You are a warrior in a lineage that dates back to Noah, tasked with preserving purity in a hybridizing world. Your daily choices, what you watch, what you read, how you pray are part of this spiritual conflict. The flood story is a warning and a promise. God judges corruption, but he provides an ark. Christ is that ark. Embrace him fully, armed with the knowledge of what he saved you from. If this revelation is reshaping how you see the sacred and you want more forgotten texts and forbidden histories uncovered, say it in the comments and follow this channel. Your support is what makes the next revelations possible. But there's one final piece, a secret so profound, it ties everything together. The final unveiling returns to the beginning. The terrifying truth is this: the flood was not the end of the story. It was a prototype for a final judgment. The watchers are still bound, but their offspring, the demonic spirits, roam, seeking to corrupt and destroy. The hybridization attempt continues spiritually through ideologies that deny the image of God in humanity. But the Bible reveals that just as Noah found grace, so can you. The ark was a shadow of Christ, the true refuge from the coming deluge of fire. Revelation speaks of a final battle where the dragon, the ancient serpent, is cast down, a direct echo of the Watcher's fall. Your role: to be awake, to build your life on the rock of this full truth. You were made for this moment. They didn't want you to know, but now you do. The flood reveals God's relentless commitment to redeem a corrupted creation. It shows that evil is older and deeper than we imagined, but God's plan is older and deeper still. Share this truth, live it. The water has receded, but the war rages on, and you are called to stand in the gap.